rural area without ever having stepped in Nairobi, directly traveling to Morocco.
So you're not even gone around Kenya, let alone leave the country.
Forget even about other towns in Kenya.
Wow.
When he came back to me with the report that he had gotten an opportunity for me, the unfortunate thing, it was a bit too late because it was in the month of September. And the academic year in Morocco starts in August. So I was already
a
late.
month late.
Yes.
Wow.
So when that opportunity was communicated to me, I was supposed to prepare and fly out within like 2 weeks. Fast forward, I got to the university, I got admitted, but the shock of my life is that, I had a roommate from Mongolia. So Mongolia is environment, and that country is...
it's part of the Sahara, right?
Yes. It's food...
Like they did like $12 billion in revenue, right? So very big. But this was a program you are engaged in Kenya while in Kenya.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's a management trainee program, as you have said it well. AGCO is a Fortune 500, one of the biggest 500 companies in Europe.
Hi there. Welcome to the Startup Evangelist, Ideas for Africa. I'm your host, Daniel Kitwa. And as always, thank you for your support. We encourage you to keep subscribing, liking, and sharing, as well as sending your feedback on how the conversations are going. Today, I'm joined with a very interesting guest, Mr. Joseph Wambugu. He's a business development professional at Eco Securities, a company that focuses on climate finance and the carbon markets globally, and he leads the African expansion efforts. He has a very interesting, background growing up in rural Laikipia, and working on, agriculture, logistics, and the climate space. So, welcome on board, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for having me.
Yeah,
looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, so maybe let's just jump into it. A brief about yourself. You describe yourself as a Kenyan born from rural Laikipia, the plains of Laikipia. So how was it growing up? What's your story? And, in brief in terms of what led you to this moment,
Yeah. So thank you very much. And I think... my story is quite long, but I think we'll have enough time to talk about it.
Yeah.
But first of all, I'm Joseph Wambugu, and as Daniel has mentioned, I'm right now a climate finance professional working for a global climate consulting firm called Eco Securities. And what we do at Eco Securities is to look at a more justified way for Africa to get resources from the developed economies. We know that historically, Africa has always been seen as a beggar because the way we have gotten support from the developed countries is through donation, and I would say from sympathy kind of money coming in. But right now, there is this concept of carbon financing that honestly puts Africa as a trader of assets that are worth selling. So when you think about carbon markets, it's a tradable asset.
Yes.
And I think we'll get into the details of that. So that's what I have been doing for the last 2 years. But previously, as you have mentioned, I grew up in Laikipia. So Laikipia is one of the, I would say, the outskirts or the remote counties of this country.
Yeah.
And I attended, rural primary school and rural secondary school. And by the grace of God, immediately after secondary school, I got a scholarship to go and study abroad in a country that I have never thought about, in a language that I have never studied. And I would say that I'm a hard worker. I work hard. I don't believe in challenges. I don't believe in working smart. I believe in working hard until you get to that level of mastery where you can now refine your skills and work smart. So in short, that is my story. And I'm very glad for this far I have come. I would say that a lot of people in their career path, they have godfathers, they have people to show them the way. But being the most exposed person in my family, I had to build that way for myself.
Yeah.
And also,
Self-taught.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, interesting. So you mentioned that immediately after school, high school, I remember you told me you had like 2 weeks. You got a last-minute government scholarship to Morocco to go study. So you had like 2 weeks to prepare. Morocco is, of course, in Africa, but culturally very different from Kenya. There's Arabic influence. There's French speaking. There, a very different cultural setting. So maybe maybe just give us a brief on how was your experience there in terms of challenges. What did you learn? How did it sort of shape your thinking in terms of your studies and also after that your career?
Yeah. So I think that story will show people that there is no challenge that is impossible to overcome, because I can tell you that I came from the rural area without ever having stepped in Nairobi, directly traveling to Morocco, studying.
So you had not even gone around Kenya, let alone leave the country.
Forget even about other towns in Kenya. And
wow.
I didn't even know the nearest town to my
Village,
area, to my village, which is Nyahururu.
From your village,
I didn't even know Nyahururu quite well. I think I had visited, and when I was living in Kenya, I was 18 years. And I think I had visited Nyahururu like 3 times.
Wow.
So I left the village right to a country that I've never even imagined about. And what I was saying is that that story, it underscores the fact that there is no challenge that is impossible for anyone to overcome if you stay committed and you work hard and you know the purpose. So how it happened is that I have told you that I went into a primary school called Kundarira. I know maybe people from Laikipia would relate, but it's quite a remote primary school. And then, as you would know, village people, you attend to the secondary school
close to you,
next gate
which
to
is
your
cheaper,
primary.
really. Yeah,
yes,
because you walk to school. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So after that, I think I didn't perform quite well, but I had an admission letter to a better high school, but my parents couldn't afford. So I went to the secondary school next gate.
Next door, yeah.
Exactly. So it's called Marmanet Secondary School. Is on your way from Nyahururu to Rumuruti. So exactly in between a place called Oljabet.
Yeah.
So the beauty of my motivation is that I used to work very hard, but under the circumstances of my schooling, I couldn't perform well.
There's always a ceiling.
Exactly.
Because of the resources, books, everything,
And it was a day school.
Yeah.
I used to travel like 7 kilometers every day, like 4 kilometers to and 4 kilometers back, so around 8. But from Form 1 to Form 4, I was always number 1. The grade notwithstanding. The best I ever performed was a B, a flat B plane. So, but nevertheless, I was number 1. Either it's C minus, C plus, B minus. I was always the one leading that school. So by chance, there was a politician from that side who was aspiring to vie for a certain position in the upcoming elections. That was back in 2008. So I think he was preparing himself for 2013 or something. So he was part of the board of management of that school, Marmanet Secondary School. So he said the performance of this guy should not be left to go, because how it is that I might not get a grade that would give me HELB scholarship in Kenya. So he said, whatever grade he will get, we'll try and get a scholarship for him outside the country. So by chance, I was also number 1 in KCSE, but I got my best grade. I got a B plane, and I was over-celebrated in that school. I think it was
a big achievement for the community.
Exactly, yes. So the best ever grade from that school by that time, since 1976, was a B plus. So like
you are the second.
I was the second
in the history of the
in the history of the school. But the consistency of my performance, I think, is what gave them confidence that I could perform better if given an opportunity
in a different circumstance.
Yes. So as you know, politicians, they never give solid promise. So they said they would look for something and get back when they get it. So you would be surprised that Kenya has a lot of study exchange program with so many countries, but these programs are never advertised anywhere. I think
so it's very hard to get information, even if you're qualified or interested in a particular field.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, apart from these big universities like Harvard or others that have structured way of how to apply for
Onboarding,
scholarship and onboarding, these other countries you have to go through embassies,
a government office,
exactly.
like Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Education.
Yes. And ideally, this scholarship should be published in public journals
where everyone can.
Everyone can apply. But as you know, the interest of politicians is that they share this among themselves. There are those who choose to sell to make money,
the opportunities.
Yes, and there are others who give them as encouragement for people who don't have the financial muscles to pay. So
it's
I think
a political tool at the end of the day, whether to campaign or
So for me, I thank God it wasn't presented as a product to buy. Then it was presented to me as an opportunity, and also for him to make a good case. And I wasn't the only one. I think since then I was the first one in his scholarship program, but it went on until I think 2015. And even recently I have seen some people supported by him go to China and other places.
Okay.
So when I got that opportunity,
and I guess he's still an MP or something.
Unfortunately, he never made it to be elected. Yeah. So he's called the Itamwangi. I think there is nothing much to hide. He was the permanent secretary for a long time in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Later, he tried to vie for Laikipia County Senator. I think twice. It didn't work. But yeah, he's still very proactive in supporting education programs
Good
within the county. Yeah. So when he came back to me with the report that he had gotten an opportunity for me, the unfortunate thing, it was a bit too late because it was in the month of September. And the academic year in Morocco starts in August. So I was
you're
already
a month late.
Yes.
Wow.
So when that opportunity was communicated to me, I was supposed to prepare and fly out within like 2 weeks. And that is...
So it means you would have already lost 6 weeks of
exactly.
school.
So classes had already started. So I had like less than 2 weeks to make everything and go.
Paperwork, everything.
Exactly. And I didn't even have a passport. First of all, I was even asking what is a passport. I thought it was a simple photo from a photo studio. And then I came to realize it's a full booklet.
Legal document.
Yes. But, in Kenya, politics, I would say political will is everything.
Yeah. So he managed to get you everything. Wow.
And back then, he was working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So he connected me to someone immediately with a big help from the principal of my former secondary school. So it was like a great collaboration. I was able to travel to Nairobi the next day after communication. I got the passport the same day and my visa the same day from the Moroccan embassy. And then I was given all the papers that I needed to travel.
Okay.
But the surprising thing was that I was told that I need to raise 52,000 for my flight. And like my parents didn't have anything. But I think...
So that's like $400.
Yes, quite a lot of money. Back in 2008. But I think that that scholarship opportunity was quite a big deal in a way that...
So it was fully paid?
Yes, fully paid. And probably I thought it came with a ticket, but maybe someone decided to keep it. Yes. So I think our church and our village, they were so much excited by that opportunity, and they really came
did
through.
A crowdfunding.
Exactly. And I would say within like 5 days, we had that
the
money.
The most successful crowdfunding project
in all forms
Laikipia.
of funding. So I know there are people who put their stake there that when I come back, I'll help them. Others...
Oh my, you have a lot of debt.
Yes.
Black tax.
I'm telling you. Others was like, good heart donation. And others, it was like debt, which my parents, continued repaying for like a period of another 2-3 years.
So you left. So now you've gone. What course is this? Is it being taught in French? How was your sort of now, life in Morocco?
Yeah. So I was given papers at the embassy, but I didn't actually even have time to read. And even if I had time, all the papers were either in Arabic or French. And I was so naive that I didn't even like bother to check those papers. I thought I would just arrive at the airport and picked by people and taken to the embassy.
School,
But I am telling to the school, it was a very, very difficult journey. And reality hit me when I got into the aircraft. I started looking at those papers. I couldn't read anything. I couldn't understand nothing. So when
it was a direct flight.
It wasn't a direct flight.
It was a connecting flight.
It was a connecting flight.
So you also needed to figure out your way at the layover and
with 2 layovers, one in Dubai, another one in Libya, Tripoli.
Yeah.
So I think when I arrived there, it was a very traumatizing experience. I couldn't even speak in English that people could understand. Straight from the village, we were speaking Kikuyu.
Yeah.
So even in the flight, I wasn't understanding the language of those air hostess, anybody speaking American English. I wasn't understanding it. And getting into Morocco, like the biggest shock of my life, I saw that everybody there was white. I thought I would find like black people like the one I'm used to in Kenya, 18 years old,
you are
naive.
Told it's in Africa, but you didn't know the...
I think, when you live so much in the village, you don't have exposure and reality of the world. So to cut the story short, I struggled so much at the airport, asking people, do you speak English? Like I asked like 10 people, Morocco, majority of the people speak Arabic. That is the street language. And then only in universities, you will find people speaking French because that's the official language. And then I got a good Samaritan who wrote me a paper note in French and told me to show people when I got into the train and then the taxi driver so that he can take me to the destination. It was a struggle. Fast forward, I got to the university, I got admitted, but the shock of my life is that, I had a roommate from Mongolia. So Mongolia is...
So there was this, it's like everywhere in the world, there are these scholarships. So you meet people from all over the world in Morocco.
Yes.
Wow.
So how it happens?
And what was the name of the course?
The course, first of all, once you get to Morocco, if you are not French speaking, you undergo 1 year of language training, very intensive.
Okay.
So the whole of 2008, 2010, 2008, 2009, I was doing language. So it's after you pass the language and you are great in language that now you can choose a course.
Because the whole academic system is in French.
In French, yes. Yeah. So anybody who is not French speaking, there is a big school at Rabat, the capital city, the administrative capital city of Morocco, where people meet to study language. So there are people from Ghana, Nigeria, Liberia, from Middle East, the Arabic speaking, and then Far East, the Mongolia, the Chinese. So many people used to go there. So our class was full of all manner of languages.
It was like the United Nations.
Yes. But we had no common language because me, I'm speaking English. The guys from Middle
Chinese,
East.
Probably Swahili.
Yes.
Yeah, English. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then now what was happening is that in the university hostel, they were not pairing people who speak the same language. Yeah. So I couldn't be paired in the same room as a Kenyan or a guy from Ghana or Liberia.
Or Nigeria,
Yes. Yeah. So that you can also improve your speaking.
It was intentional for, like, none of you speaks each other's native language, but you learn, okay, wow.
Yes.
Yeah, very
so that's why I was paired in my room with a guy from Mongolia.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I was like, you are speaking using hard language.
Yeah.
So you wake up, you open your blanket, you are face to face with each other, but you are like, you are good. Like we couldn't speak.
Yeah.
But the beauty of that hardship environment made me speak French within like 2 months. Wow. Because any word that you learned, you had to use it the next minute. You learn to say hi, you use it with your neighbor. You learn to say let's go, you use it with your neighbor.
It was survival.
It was survival and accelerated learning. And I have seen so many people here in Kenya trying to study French. Here
even
at
me,
Alliance
my French is not as because no one, very few people speak it, so you always forget. It's a slow
so
process.
A lot of people, they try here, but it doesn't work because the next person you meet, you speak Swahili or English. But in Morocco, it was like accelerated, and I can tell you, fast forward again, I was able to pass with a good score, and I got admission in one of the best universities in a town called Meknes, like 200 kilometers from Rabat. And there I studied in engineering in agriculture.
Wow.
So the first 3 years of degree, I specialized in general agronomy. So that is basically the science of plant
Agriculture.
crop crop production and animal farming.
And the 2 months, since you learned French in 2 months, so you are not you sort of transitioned immediately. You couldn't wait for the 1 year.
No, I spoke in 2 months, but now
the process, you
I
still
had
went
to do
through the process.
the whole 1 year.
Okay.
Then you sit for the exam.
Okay.
Then
but at least it's better, since now the other months of the year you can experience the culture,
exactly, yes.
you know, and just prep, even read books in French, just learn about how things work there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now engineering in agriculture, 3 years, right? How was it?
It was another terrible experience because, you know, learning French, it's more of like being spoon-fed, being babysat. Someone is there supporting you and you are practicing just to speak. Now you are in a class of engineering where you are learning hard math, hard physical sciences like electricity, you know, dynamics of, I don't know, magnetism.
So the tech,
so many stuff.
When you learn the language, you don't learn the technical jargon in your course. So it's also you also, I guess, interact with new vocabulary when you're now in school.
Exactly. And then now you interact with accents. You know, when you are learning, it's only you and the teacher, and the teacher has learned how to speak slowly in a way that you can listen and understand. Now you are getting into a physics class, you are getting into a class of geology, and you are lecturer in a lecture of 80 students seated in an amphitheater. And because maybe I didn't want to sit in front, I was sitting right behind. I tell you, I spent like 2 months without ever hearing whatever the lecturers were saying, because, you know, the room has some bit of echo, the sound, the voice of the lecturer is not audible. And also I was fearing to be asked to speak, because when you're learning French, speaking comes last. So you write, you read, and then you speak. So it was terribly
so
the hardest experience for me.
You could want to ask a question, but, you know, there's that, you know, there's a lot of...
Yes, there is the fear, challenge, you don't know how to construct a sentence. And people are like wondering in that class, because I was the only English speaking in that class.
Native?
Yes.
Okay.
Others were from Senegal, and then, of course, 90% are Moroccans, and others are from English-speaking, French-speaking countries. And people are looking at me like this and wondering, Joseph, did you just come from nursery school to university? Because they didn't understand the concept whereby you can be sent to a university to study in a language that you completely don't understand. In as much as I had learned it for 1 year, the professional study environment is terribly difficult.
And then my question, in terms of when you're doing the engineering for agriculture, since it's in a Moroccan context, is it more tailored for, you know, either the crops they grow there, the agricultural policies, you know, how is it sort of, because I'm assuming the goal was still to learn and come back to Kenya. It wasn't like those scholarships where you study and then try to get a job there, right?
Yeah. So the arrangement with the Kenyan government was that one must return upon the completion and build your country.
It was an exchange.
Yes. And I can say that the study in Morocco was, I would say, a case study for the whole of Africa. Morocco is 90% desert environment. And that country is...
it's part of the Sahara, right?
Yes. It's food sufficient. They do a lot of export, especially horticulture and fruits to Europe. And only 10%...
So a lot of it is on irrigation and regenerative agriculture.
Yes. So sustainable cropping system and irrigation.
Climate smart.
Exactly.
Wow.
So Morocco it was declared, I think, around 2015. No, actually, when I was actually there, around 2007, it was declared food sufficient with only 10% of arable land. So you can imagine what type of technology goes into their farming. They had one of the best agricultural policies that they used to call the Plan Maroc Veg, the Green Morocco Plan, that was based on aggregation, because majority of our farms in Africa are based on small scale. And that's why farmers are unable to come together to procure inputs as a collective approach. or to sell their products to the market while they are put together. So Morocco understood that very well,
Yeah.
and they built one of the best plan for small-scale agricultural development in Africa, and was borrowed by other countries, including Gabon and Senegal, and has become very, very transformative. So at the university, we studied quite a lot. A lot of things were quite new to me, because for me, I was just used to farming maize and beans. So right now, I'm being exposed to greenhouse farming, things that do with fruit farming, like apples, peach.
And all these were also for exports,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So it's more of large-scale farming. You see a farm
Very
of like
commercial.
very commercial.
And like subsistence in the one you are seeing in Laikipia.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for me, it was more of a surprise than learning. But I would say that I survived, and I want to say that the survival that made me make it academically in Morocco was based on teamwork. Because one of my lecturers, after interacting with me during the first days in the university, he told me that, Joseph, if you want to make it in this school, you must work 5 times harder than your French-speaking colleagues. And then he gave me an idea of like forming study groups with some friends who were understanding various subjects, so that I don't struggle with the language and also struggle with the technical content of the lessons. So that's how I managed to pass my first year exams. The second one, then from that year, I think I was able really to fly on my own.
Yeah, yeah.
And I graduated in late 2014 with a master's in rural development. And my story is a testimony. Like,
So it was both undergrad and masters.
Yes.
So it's sort of you're like compressed in, like you study on a very accelerated pace.
exactly.
Wow.
So in the French academic system, there is what they call diplôme. So it's not diploma, but it's a joint master's. So you don't get your bachelor's degree. You only get a straight master's. But there is like a general
So
cycle.
all the people who were in your class were all straight from high school.
Yes,
in their countries.
yes.
In whatever is the equivalent.
Yes.
Okay.
So in
Interesting.
Morocco, in French speaking, mostly you get a degree within 3 years, and then 2 years you get a master's.
Okay.
But now in this university,
And then there's no break. So it's
there
3,
is no
then
break.
2. So
Yes, yes.
5 years you're
Yes.
done.
So everybody studies 3 years general agronomy, and then from there you can specialize in rural development,
Okay.
agricultural economics, phytopathology, animal production, nursery management. Yeah, so for me, I went for rural development because I knew that like Africa is more of rural stuff. When I come back, I didn't envisage myself to be in the city. So I was like looking more to working in the rural setup with development organizations and communities. Yeah, so that's how my story was in Morocco. Immediately after graduation, I
came back to Kenya.
Yes.
Did you, and then at that time you came and pivoted to the climate space, or what was the story there?
So when I came back in 2015, I would say January 2015, that's when I started working. As a fighter, I came to Nairobi and I started staying with my friend. I printed a lot of CVs, so I was walking into offices and dropping them.
Yeah.
And coincidentally, I got an internship with an NGO called AVC Foundation. They deal with a development program.
It's an Italian.
Yes,
yeah, I know,
exactly.
yeah.
So funded by, they used to have a program called Distance Support Program. So they get individual people from the church in Italy, and then they support.
It's like a faith-based
exactly.
funded.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
So I got an internship there, which led to me being recommended to another adjacent NGO called COA, Companionship for Work organization, that I was able to be the project officer for like a few months. But that one was more into the development sector and NGO world. So I did it for like a year. And then I got a job as an agronomist for an SME company that was constructing greenhouses until around end of 2016. And then 2017, I worked for a consulting firm as an agronomy specialist. So I was doing trainings for farmers and suppliers of inputs. And then...
so really on the ground.
stuff. Practicing exactly what I learned in Morocco.
Yeah.
And then until 2018, I got into a management trainee program with a company called AGCO, better known for the Massey Ferguson brand of tractor.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Massey Ferguson, I was reading last year, it's a global, like they did like $12 billion
Yes.
in revenue,
Yes.
right? So very big. But this was a program you are engaged in Kenya, while in
Yes,
Kenya.
yes.
Okay.
So it's a management trainee program, as you have said it well. Is AGCO is a Fortune 500, one of the biggest 500 companies in the US.
So AGCO here, was it like they are not for profit arm, or it's just branding for profit but supporting their initiatives in Kenya?
Yeah, so what they wanted is to expand into the African continent. They had a small office in South Africa because, as you know, AGCO is a manufacturer and their business
tractors.
is a B2B business. They do manufacturing, but then in every country they have a network of distributors
who sell to commercial farmers,
exactly,
large scale,
who sell now to the end users.
Yeah.
So they wanted to have a good footprint in Africa using the African talent. So and the best way to do that was to launch a management trainee program so that they can get good talent and train those people on management skills before they onboard them. So they had partnered with the Strathmore Business School to launch the management trainee program, a 2-year program. It wasn't very intensive because they wanted us to, of course, not to be employed by someone else, but also to commit to attending 3 classes per week. I think 2 or 3 days in a week,
so
and then a lot
like
of assignment
classes. I'm assuming it's like case study type format.
Yes.
Yeah.
So class and case studies and a lot of field visit to see their distributors and also travels in Zambia, South Africa, to the US, so that we can
to experience the supply chain.
Yeah, exactly. Before now we get onboarded. So we were a team of 20, and I would say after the 2 years I was among the lucky few. They hired 10 people on permanent basis.
It wasn't like everyone gets in.
It was a very competitive program. So only 10 people managed to be hired after it. So I worked for them as the sales specialist for North, West, and Central Africa. So I was supporting the distribution network in those countries.
And I'm assuming now the French skills now come in handy, because now at least you can go communicate to farmers, partners, distributors over there.
Yes, because West Africa is majorly French-speaking countries. So that's how I worked with them now. I was with them since 2018 all the way to 2023. And then now into 2023, that's when I did a shift from agriculture to climate change. I would say agriculture is a very, very fulfilling field. As you know, we have seen people die of hunger in Africa, and there is nothing more fulfilling to work in a sector that, help people not to sleep hungry.
Very impactful,
Yes.
Yeah. And then, so after that, is that when you joined South Pole, or what's this after that in terms of transition to more of like climate with other hats like energy, etc.?
Yeah, so I think my interest in climate change started developing while I was working for AGCO, the Massey Ferguson company.
I'm assuming you got exposed to those, topics, conversations, etc.
Definitely. So being a big corporate, big company that doing manufacturing.
Sustainability targets.
Exactly. Yeah. So I could hear internally people talk about net zero goals, ESG report, I think emission reduction.
Yeah.
So I started slowly reading about what those were. And then that's what created my curiosity to start, investigating roles here and there that could fit my profile. But I think one more important thing I needed to mention here, because I told you when I was doing the management trainee program, it was not actually intensive. I was only...
Because of the 3 days, and then they want you to visit places. So you had a bit of time to yourself, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I was at Strathmore, someone came to me and gave me an idea of using my time wisely instead of just sleeping or overstudying, because overstudying is not also helpful. You just need to study enough, then you will get the skills once you start working. Yes. So he told me that if you have 400K, I can buy a small car and then maybe start driving Uber. And then
that's when Uber was starting to pickup.
Yes, yes. I would say Uber was there since 2014, but now it was shifting from, like being a luxury kind of a business
corporate
to serve
now
the corporate.
even retail.
Yes, then now they were moving from relatively bigger vehicle and now shifting to very small
CC,
cars. Yes, smaller
fuel
CC,
efficient.
fuel efficient, cheaper to acquire, and then they can now cut the price to the end user. And then if you remember, people would complain that the taxi driver used to charge quite a lot, and then now
they broke that segment.
Yes.
Now they became very affordable.
So from 2018, like people would tell you the prices went down to like even 200, 300 per trip, all the way from like 1,500 as the minimum. The minimum
almost like
fare.
80% drop.
So that's when I bought a small car. I started driving Uber. During the trainee program, we were paid like $300 per month, which was actually good to pay bills
at that time,
because I wasn't married yet and I didn't have a lot of bills. So I used to drive and maybe make another like 30 to 50K per month because I didn't have much to do.
Almost $500.
Yes. So by the end of the month, I could have myself like 100K or maybe $800.
$1,000.
$1,000. So that's a thing that really opened me up because, as you know, in my history, I didn't know Nairobi well. I only traveled.
So that's when you knew also, because you had like left Laikipia very young and went to Morocco without even knowing your own country.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
So driving Uber gave me quite a lot of exposure to know the city, to know how people live, where people live, the whole design of Nairobi. Right now, if you tell me Mlolongo, if you tell me Utawala, if you tell me Fedha, already I have a picture of what you are talking about, the road, the building, and somehow even the traffic situation of those sides.
Subcultures.
Exactly. And now even I have an idea of where if you tell me you live in a certain place, I can quickly get a picture of, how that place looks like.
The topology.
And interacting with people when driving. So that's something that really also incentivized me to be very proactive on social media, to encourage young people to take opportunities.
That's when you started your YouTube storytelling about Uber, about taxi, about small businesses.
Yes. So, but I keep it, I have a YouTube channel, by the way, that where I discuss so much things about, the taxi industry, the misconceptions.
Logistics, buying vehicles.
Exactly. So that people can familiarize themselves. And I think even the work you are doing here is very important to just demystify the truth about certain sectors, because I see the ride-hailing business is one of the most misconceived opportunity, because drivers will always complain, but I see it as a strategy for them, to gain more benefits by saying the business does not work, but that does not overrule the fact that there are so many challenges. There are very bad days when drivers can go home without anything, but the overall performance of that sector for a certain category of income, it's a big opportunity for certain people. And that's what I try to put out through my YouTube channel, so that people can have information and get in there with the right, information to make choices.
And I saw recently you did a video reviewing BYD, the e-mobility opportunities. Are you seeing a lot of interest by, say, taxi drivers or companies to put more EVs into their, into their inventory or their fleet to maybe offset carbon emissions or just be more sustainable, more fuel efficient, more environmentally friendly?
Yeah. I have discussed with a lot of drivers and a lot of boda riders doing the ride hailing business and also the gig businesses like food delivery and parcel.
Logistics,
And logistics. And fortunately or unfortunately, they are so much interested in the e-mobility sector, but because of cost saving. So no rider will care about
it's first about the economics, then something, I know.
They don't care about the quality of
because it's quite
air.
a price-sensitive industry, right?
Yes.
The margins are small. People are paying off their loans, their car loans. They probably have family, so they have to be very cognizant of costs, I guess.
Sure. So like yesterday, there is a video I did with a guy with a boda doing food delivery with Glovo. He uses the traditional boda bodas, the internal combustion one.
Yeah, and the ICEs.
Yes,
yeah.
and he was telling me that he uses around 800 shillings to collect 2,000.
So for every
2,000 he collects,
2,000 shillings, he
fuels
loses 800. Yeah.
And he was very much aware of how much people using electric bike
Spend on their
on
maintenance
charging.
and charging. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
basically
yeah.
charging their battery.
And swapping. Yeah.
Yes. So he told me people with electric boda bodas, they are spending like 300 shillings. And him is spending 800 shillings to collect the same
So
amount of money.
25% savings.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for every 800 boda boda guy is using on petrol, an electric guy is using 300 shillings. So, and that is on daily basis.
And that increases disposable income and ability to spend and circulate money in an economy. If you really count the volumes of the boda bodas that are there. Yeah.
So by the end of the year, if you work out that this guy with the electric bike is saving 500 shillings, if you do that, and these guys, they ride every day, almost 365 days in a year. So how much money will the electric guy save more than this other guy with ice? But now the problem with the people in this gig economy, they don't do long-term math. They work on day-to-day basis. So he's like, I can afford to fuel 800 shillings. So why worry so much about the 200,000 that you are talking about saving by the end of the year?
Yeah.
So that's the challenge.
Yeah. Then very interesting, because now, for people like us, we're just building models in the office about immobility, about financing, but there's an actual impact in terms of the ordinary person on the ground, in terms of that $5 they are earning extra. It means, they have an extra meal. If they were skipping a meal, that's an extra meal. Probably, they can pay off their their appliances, their financing much faster, etc. Maybe now when you're working on the management trainee and this Uber side hustle, then you joined now the company. How was it there? And then actually, how is it now in transiting fully into now the climate space?
For me, I didn't see it as something new, because as you remember, I told you I have experienced many shocks in life of transition.
So you self-taught yourself.
Yes, and culture change. So, the way I went to Morocco and adapt to a different country and culture, I was very able to transition from agriculture, an area where I have very good training and experience. I understood everything about, tractors, their specification, their performance, their prices, their modeling, and also advising farmers on equipment selection. I was very comfortable in that sector, and also working for a Fortune 500 company, there is like a lot of security in terms of job and growth. But I felt like it was time for me now to shift.
Because you could have stayed and grown, become a regional manager, director into the... because they were expanding in Africa.
Exactly. So over time, I knew that could have come, but I chose to navigate a new field. And I would say the beauty of the climate change space is that as long as you know what you want, you will get it. It is one of the most open source
open door
field.
kind of.
Anything that you
there's
need.
a lot of experimenting, entrepreneurship, a lot of trying it out.
So you will find a lot of professionals in the field, but as you have said, there are so many changes that happen overnight. So nobody will proclaim themselves like the know-it-all in the climate space compared to agriculture. There has been concepts that have been proven.
There's agronomistic practices, there's policies, there's a science to the chaos. But here,
so there are people who in agriculture they can tell you they are complete experts. The same thing even in climate space. But the fact that the climate space is very, very dynamic, you'll find that it is a learning space for everyone.
And then there's also like there are lots of Venn diagrams. They overlap. Like for example, you could be in climate but doing afforestation and land use credits. You could be in climate, like myself. I'm doing mostly renewables, e-mobility, financing, for example. You could be in climate and you're doing nature-based solutions or oceans, or something else within that sort of large ecosystem.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So for me, I was able to connect very quickly with, let's say, climate financing with regard to carbon credits for land use, because I was in agriculture for a long time.
Yeah.
Having been in agriculture, then it can connect very easily with forestry type of projects. So for me, I want also to be very thankful to South Pole, because they were very, very patient with me and other colleagues. We joined as a bunch of, or like a batch of like a few people who are getting in there without a lot of background in carbon markets, climate change. And they allowed us sufficient time to learn before they started putting pressure on us now to perform.
Yes.
I would say they had a lot of resources internally, and the team was very, very supportive, especially those who are in Kenya. But also the type of business that is done in the climate change space, I said, is open source compared to the other corporate world. If you want to look for contracts between company A and company B, you'll never find it posted online. But for the climate change and especially the carbon market,
because there's the issue of transparency, and you have to post your methodologies, your project preparation documents for people to critique, and also engaging the communities.
It's just that people who are critic of carbon markets are not fully aware of.
But of course, there have also been, to be honest, there have been bad players who've messed, and probably that's where the rest of the people get that bad press.
I completely agree. But when the way I told you, I am not a very good friend of the perfect. I'm not a good friend of us being smart if you don't know the process. Once you familiarize yourself with the standard processes, now you can start talking about being perfect and being smart. And I think that is something that carbon markets have been, attacked in a very unfair way, because there was no perfect approach towards carbon markets. Actually, there was nothing. And
like virtually most of the methodologies, they were still being built at the time the markets were evolving.
Exactly, yes.
And even pricing, it was this year
trial
it's up,
and
tomorrow
error.
it's down.
Yes. So that's what the pioneers of this sector said, that it's good to try things and improve as you go, instead of waiting for the perfect
policy, the perfect
and then you don't even
technology.
Get the good. So for me, I appreciate the fact that we are now talking about compliance carbon markets. We are talking of processes that have oversight of the government,
and now we are talking of carbon tech, right? So there's a lot of like DMRV, digital monitoring, verification systems. We have a lot of, even blockchain-based tools. There's a lot more, even awareness. So very interesting.
For me, I would say that it's a process that has taken time to grow. And where we are headed, I think people will now appreciate the efforts that were done by the people who made mistakes. Because without mistakes, there would be no growth.
We rise on the shoulders of giants and people who've gone ahead of us.
Exactly.
Maybe as we try to conclude, I think we've not even we've not touched. I think carbon. We'll talk about it in another episode. We can discuss it. Maybe just give us a brief on trends. On that space, what to look for, opportunities. There are people people want to build careers around that, younger people. What are the trends and opportunities that you're seeing, that people could tap into?
I would say that right now there are so many opportunities around climate change and sustainability. And
because like now policy is a big thing, because Kenya is now, I think, has signed bilateral with I think the Swiss government through the Clink Foundation. So there'll be opportunities for the compliance market, a lot of opportunities for consulting, for research, for compliance. Like if you're a company that wants to trade in the compliance market, you need to go through approvals by government. So there'll be, expertise required on that to navigate the regulatory environment. For me, I think also financing, because, the project preparation phase is very expensive. I think there was a study you were doing with some guys. It was, I think, anywhere between $100,000 and $200,000, right? So, that's like 20-30 million shillings. So that's a lot. So probably funding for, upfront financing, backed on, project development, experience. So I think financing could be one. I think we've mentioned technology. What else?
Yeah, as you have mentioned, historically the carbon market space was dominated by the big players, and that was due to the fact that the process of carbon asset development is terribly expensive because of the quality, because we talk of quality carbon credits. You can only get them if you invest in a lot of processes that increase transparency, integrity. There are levels of verification. There are people who do DMRV, as you have mentioned. You invest in systems for digital monitoring and verification. There is on-site visit. So at the end of the day, a carbon process, before you get your first carbon credit, you will have invested around $200,000.
I saw someone, they were trying to play with virtual reality, like you wear those visuals and they take you to the site. Maybe the site has CCTV so you can see stuff happening. So yeah, there's I think there's a lot there to be done.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But the biggest opportunity that I see, as now we go down to earth, where we have many startups and many players who cannot afford, first of all, the 200K to register their own carbon project.
Yeah.
But also, even if they could afford the 200K, in a real case, that size of their business might not make a
you
business
might not
case.
recoup the investment. Yeah?
Exactly.
Because you need scale to...
For sure.
Yeah.
So as we now try to bring everyone on board, because climate change, has to be fought by everyone, and we need everybody's input, and everyone who is putting forward some good efforts definitely should be compensated for their hard work and their good work for the environment.
Yeah.
So the biggest opportunity that I see here is for small companies to come together and do what I would call aggregation. And I would say Eco Securities is doing some very good work in the e-mobility space and the distributed energy sector.
So basically lumping together various startups into one carbon project.
Exactly.
So they're cost sharing, and they can unlock carbon contracts against the aggregated fleets.
Exactly. So that's the only viable approach right now, because when you look at the e-mobility sector, for instance, in Kenya, we have over 80 startups, doing all manner of e-mobility innovations, from two-wheelers, three-wheelers,
four-wheelers,
charging infrastructure, solar-powered chargers and everything. But these companies, if you assess them one by one, only maybe one or two have a good scale for a viable carbon
stand on their own.
To stand on their own.
Yeah.
So if we have an individual approach towards carbon development for the e-mobility, then we leave out 90% of the market. And coordinating these startups to come together in one single platform is a lot of work, because they are using different technologies in their vehicles to monitor, I would say, range, to monitor distances, to monitor how the geography. But now when you register them at a common approach, you need to harmonize the monitoring system. So the company that is spearheading that, for instance, Eco Securities, would need to work very closely with the technology company to harmonize the monitoring for all that. But again, Eco Securities, we are also here to pursue business, but with impact. So who is going to finance all this? And that's why we are talking of building a partnership with other players, including financiers, as well as, people who are just after positive climate impact, to make sure that we allow these small companies to access carbon financing. And the issue that would happen if we don't act now is that there is a concept in carbon eligibility called the common practice approach. According to the current methodologies, if a country has more than 5% practice on a certain technology, it is seen as a common practice. So if we don't register our e-mobility projects today with the carbon standard, and then 2 years from now we find that 5% of the vehicles in Kenya are electric
EVs,
vehicles, then it will be seen as a common practice, and hence it might not qualify for carbon financing.
Okay.
So the same thing happened. You are made a victim of your own success.
Because we will say like, these people did not transition; they're already doing it. So
they were succeeding without
business
money.
as usual.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. So there's opportunity there, but of course, as always with anything, there's a technology window, there's a business case window. So we should all take the chance. So I think we could talk for another hour easily. Allow me to pause there. Definitely like to have you back. Joseph, very insightful. We've talked about Laikipia, Morocco, Kenya. We've talked about e-mobility, Uber business, agriculture, your experience in financing in the carbon markets. So very interesting journey. We'll share your contacts if people want to engage with Eco Securities and yourself, and grow the ecosystem. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Daniel.
Yeah.
And always a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much.
All right.